Some cities are simply places where people live. They grow because of trade or geography or political power. But a few cities become something else entirely. They become repositories of civilizational memory, places where history, faith, and identity accumulate over centuries. One of the most famous examples is Jerusalem. In his remarkable work, Jerusalem, the Biography, historian Simon Montefiore describes a city shaped by conquest, destruction, rebuilding, and reinterpretation across 3,000 years. Empires arrived, empires disappeared. Temples became churches. Churches became mosques. Each new structure was not merely a building, it was a declaration, a statement about authority, about faith, about whose vision of the world now defined the sacred landscape. Jerusalem reminds us of something important. Sacred cities are rarely just about religion. They are about memory and power expressed through a place. And once you recognize this pattern, you begin to notice it elsewhere, including in India. People often ask me a simple question: what is India like? Friends ask it, sometimes strangers ask it as well. And for many years, I found it surprisingly difficult to answer. Not because India is hard to describe, but because it is difficult to summarize. You could talk about Delhi, the political capital, or Mumbai, the financial engine, or Bengaluru, the technological frontier. Each of them reveals something real about modern India, but none of them fully explain it. Because India is not only a modern nation, it is a civilization with a very long memory. And sometimes the story of a civilization becomes visible in a single place. For me, that place is Ayodhya. For centuries, Ayodhya has held a special place in the Hindu tradition. It is revered as the birthplace of Ram, the central figure of epic Ramayana. Ram represents more than devotion. He represents an ideal, the ideal of morality, of duty, of governance guided by dharma. In that sense, Ram functions not only as a devotional figure, but as a civilizational archetype. And Ayodhya became the geographic anchor of that memory. History, however, rarely preserves sacred landscapes untouched. In the 16th century, during the expansion of the Mughal Empire, a mosque known as Babri Masjid was constructed at the site associated with Ram's birthplace. This too follows a familiar historical pattern. Across civilizations, conquering powers often reshape sacred spaces, not simply to build new places of worship, but to signal the arrival of new political and cultural order. Architecture becomes a language of authority. Buildings become symbols of who now rules. Yet, sacred memory rarely disappears. It persists, sometimes quietly, in stories, in pilgrimage traditions, in cultural memory. And occasionally, centuries later, those memories return to the center of public life. That is what eventually happened in Ayodhya. The modern dispute surrounding the site unfolded over decades. Political mobilization, public debate, legal arguments. Eventually, the issue was resolved with India's constitutional framework through a ruling by the Supreme Court. And in 2024, the Ram Mandir was consecrated. The site, layered with centuries of memory, had entered a new chapter. But something else is happening in Ayodhya today. The city itself is changing. Infrastructure is expanding. A new airport now links Ayodhya to the rest of India. Hotels, roads, and businesses are multiplying. Pilgrims arrive in large numbers. Workers arrive seeking opportunity. Ancient memory and modern development now coexist in the same space. This is where the deeper insight emerges. Sacred geography is where memory, faith, and power churn. Cities like Jerusalem demonstrate this over millennia. Ayodhya is experiencing its own version of that process today, a society revisiting its past, reinterpreting its symbols, and rebuilding around them. Of course, interpretations differ. Some see cultural renewal, others see political assertion. In a plural society, such disagreements are inevitable. But what is unmistakable is that Ayodhya has once again become a place where India is negotiating its relationship with its own history. Which brings me back to the question people ask: what is India like? I could describe its cities, I could list its statistics, I could summarize its politics, but none of those quite capture the experience. Because India is not only a modern state, it is a civilization that continues to engage with its past. Sometimes quietly, sometimes intensely, but always persistently. So when people ask me about India now, I often tell them about Ayodhya. Because sometimes a single city can reveal the deeper rhythms of an entire civilization. A civilization whose memory is far longer than any single generation. This has been Reflections. If you like stepping back from events and history to explore the deeper currents shaping civilizations, then please share and subscribe. Until next time.